The hiring fair on Station Kepler 9 was overwhelming for Thomas Green. He stood barely 5 feet 6 inches tall, dwarfed by the diverse alien species that crowded the employment plaza. His restaurant, the Quiet Corner, needed a cook after his previous chef left for a corporate contract with triple the pay. Thomas had saved for 3 years to open his small establishment, and now he risked losing everything if he could not find help soon. He reviewed his tablet, scrolling through applicants with growing dismay. Most demanded salaries he could not afford, or they wanted positions in flashier establishments on the station's upper levels where tourists gathered. His modest eatery served station workers and dock crew, people who wanted decent food at reasonable prices. A shadow fell across his booth. Thomas looked up and up and up. The alien woman towered 9 feet tall, with broad shoulders and arms thicker than his torso. Her skin held a deep purple hue with silver markings along her forearms and neck. 4 amber eyes studied him with an intensity that made his throat tighten. She belonged to the Korvathi species, known throughout human space as formidable warriors and traders. "You need cook," she said. Her voice rumbled like distant thunder. "I am Nilara." "I cook." Thomas swallowed hard. Yes. "Do you have experience?" She placed a massive hand on his booth table, which creaked under the weight. 20 cycles cooking. Ships, stations, outposts. "I cook many foods. Human foods, too. May I see your credentials?" Thomas managed, trying to keep his voice steady. Nilara handed him a data chip. He inserted it into his tablet with trembling fingers. Her records were impressive. She had worked in kitchens across 5 systems, with glowing recommendations from every employer. But each position lasted only a few months before she moved on. "Why did you leave your previous jobs?" Thomas asked. The 4 amber eyes narrowed slightly. "Too much noise. Too many people. Your place is called Quiet Corner, yes. I like quiet." Thomas understood that feeling more than she knew. He had opened his restaurant specifically because he preferred calm environments over the chaotic energy of popular establishments. Still, hiring someone nearly twice his height, who could probably bend steel with her bare hands, made anxiety twist in his stomach. "The pay is not high," he warned. "I can offer standard station wage for cooks, plus meals and a small bonus based on customer satisfaction." "Acceptable," Nilara said immediately. "When I start?" 2 days later, Thomas unlocked the Quiet Corner at dawn to find Nilara already waiting outside. She had to duck significantly to enter through the doorway. In the kitchen, she examined every tool, every appliance, every storage unit with methodical precision. Her large hands moved with surprising delicacy as she tested knives and inspected cookware. "Kitchen is good," she announced. "Small, but efficient. I begin prep now." Thomas showed her the menu and the ingredients in storage. He explained his philosophy: fresh food, honest portions, fair prices. Nilara listened without interrupting, her 4 eyes tracking his movements as he spoke. When the restaurant opened for lunch, Thomas handled the front while Nilara worked in the kitchen. He heard the clang of pots and the hiss of the stove, but nothing else. No humming, no muttering, no music. Just the sounds of cooking. The first orders went out perfectly. Grilled sandwiches with exactly the right char. Soups seasoned to balance. Pasta dishes that made customers close their eyes and smile. By the end of the first day, Thomas had received more compliments on the food than in the previous month combined. But Nilara made him nervous. She spoke only when necessary, her responses brief and direct. When they passed each other in the narrow space between kitchen and dining area, Thomas pressed himself against the wall to give her room. She never smiled, never made small talk, never showed any emotion beyond focused concentration on her work. On the 3rd day, Thomas dropped a tray. Plates shattered across the floor in a cascade of ceramic and half-eaten meals. He stood frozen, mortified by his clumsiness and the mess he had created during the lunch rush. Nalara emerged from the kitchen. She looked at the broken dishes, then at Thomas, who could not meet her gaze. Without a word, she retrieved a broom and dustpan from the closet and swept up the debris while Thomas stood uselessly to the side. She dumped the fragments in the recycler, then placed one massive hand briefly on his shoulder before returning to the kitchen. The touch was gentle, but Thomas felt the raw strength in those fingers. She could have crushed his bones without effort. By the end of the first week, a quiet corner had doubled its regular customers. Word spread through the station about the quality of the food. Thomas found himself taking reservations, something he had never needed to do before. The money situation, which had kept him awake at night for months, finally looked manageable. Friday evening, after the last customer departed and Thomas locked the front door, he began cleaning the dining area. Nalara worked in the kitchen, handling the mountain of dishes and cookware from a busy night. Thomas wiped down tables, swept the floor, and tried not to think about the mortgage payment that would come due next week. He heard a sound from the kitchen, a low, rhythmic noise he could not immediately identify. Thomas set down his cleaning cloth and moved quietly toward the kitchen doorway. Nalara stood with her back to him, her massive frame hunched over the sink. Her shoulders shook. The sound came again, and Thomas realized with creeping horror that she was crying. Not soft tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that made her entire body tremble. Terror and concern warred in his chest. Something was terribly wrong, but approaching a distressed alien who could break him like a twig seemed like a dangerous idea. "Nalara?" he said softly. She spun around with startling speed. Her 4 eyes were wet, her face contorted with an expression Thomas could not read. She took a step toward him, then another. Thomas backed against the wall, his heart hammering. Nalara reached out with both hands. Thomas closed his eyes, certain he had pushed too far, that she was going to hurt him. But instead of pain, he felt those powerful arms encircle him carefully. She lifted him off the ground, as easily as picking up a child, and pressed him against her chest in what he slowly realized was a hug. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Thomas Green." "For what?" Thomas asked, his words muffled against her shoulder. "For giving me peace." She set him down gently, but kept her hands on his shoulders. Tears still ran down her face. "All my life, I am told Korvathi are warriors, strong, aggressive, good for fighting, for guarding, for intimidating. Every job, people fear me. They hire me to scare others, to be threat, to show strength. No one sees I just want to cook, that I like quiet, that loud noises hurt my ears and crowds make my chest tight." Thomas stared up at her, understanding dawning. "You opened door, saw warrior species, and you became afraid. But you hired me anyway. You read my credentials. You listened when I said I like quiet. You never asked me to be threat or show strength. You just let me cook." She wiped at her eyes with the back of one massive hand. "This week, first time in my life, people look at what I make instead of what I am. Customers say food is wonderful. They do not cross street when I walk by. They do not clutch belongings when I stand near. They just eat and smile and ask for more." "You are an excellent cook," Thomas said quietly. "The best I have ever worked with." "You are afraid of me still," Nalara observed. "I see you press against wall when I walk past. I see you flinch when I move quick. But you are afraid of most things, yes? I watch you with customers. You are shy, nervous. Yet you opened restaurant. You talk to strangers every day. You do brave things even when scared." Thomas nodded slowly. "Being afraid does not mean you cannot do something. It just means you have to do it while being afraid. Yes. Nalara's expression softened. So I frighten you tonight when I cry and hug you. But maybe tomorrow I frighten you less. And next week even less. Maybe someday we are just two people who like quiet, who work together, who are friends. Maybe, Thomas agreed. I would like that. Nalara released his shoulders and stepped back. I finish dishes now. You go home, rest. Tomorrow we cook again. As Thomas walked home through the station corridors that night, he thought about fear and strength. The galaxy saw Korvathi as warriors, and his species as diplomatic explorers. But labels did not capture the truth of individuals. Nalara wanted peace and quiet and the satisfaction of creating good meals. He wanted his own small space in the universe, where he could work without chaos. Perhaps that was the real meaning behind the term humanity. Fuck, yeah, that appeared in so many human stories. Not that humans were better or stronger than aliens, but that humans and other species could look beyond surface assumptions. They could build bridges based on shared desires rather than stereotypes. The next morning, when Thomas arrived at the quiet corner, Nalara was already there. She nodded to him, and he nodded back. They began prep work in comfortable silence, two people who understood each other a little better than they had the day before.